discussed about? Yes, the three sectors of the economy, isn't it? So which are the three sectors? Yeah, we are having the primary sector, the secondary sector and the tertiary sector. And we talked about what is the importance of these sectors also. What is the importance of the primary sector, which is considered to be the base of all the sectors. Then we are having the secondary sector, which is otherwise known as the manufacturing, and the tertiary sector, which is also known as the service sector. And in the last class, I told you that while we talk about the sectors, now when we are calculating the production in the economy, actually we talk about the GDP, or what we call it as the gross domestic product. Now what is this gross domestic product? How it is calculated? What is the importance of this GDP? When we talk about this GDP, one thing that should be kept in mind is that we calculate the value of the final goods and services. Now you might be thinking, what is this final goods? Now the final goods, for example, we are making, yes, biscuits. Okay, now when we are going to make biscuits, we need a lot of things for that. And what is that? Yeah, we need flour, we need sugar, we need baking powder, we need many other flavors and all. So all these are the ingredients that is needed to prepare this biscuit. So we start with the flour, which we get it from the primary sector. Then we move on to the secondary sector, that is manufacturing of all this, the industries and all. Now the end product, that is our biscuit, is prepared. Now we are going to sell it in the market. And when we are going to sell it in the market, one thing should be kept in mind is that the value of all this, that is the intermediate goods. Intermediate goods here is the flour, the sugar that we are adding in this. Okay, so this value of this intermediate goods is already added in the value of this biscuit. Adding all this, we take the value of this biscuit, and that is the final goods, the value of the final goods. And when we calculate the GDP, we actually take the value of the final goods only. We don't take the value of the intermediate goods, because what will happen? Because as I told you already, the value of the intermediate good is added in the value of the final goods. So there will be exaggeration. More will be shown than what we are having in the economy. So only we take the value of the final goods. And the GDP, as I told you, the GDP is the value of the final goods and services which are produced in each sector. Each sector, which sectors? Yes, the primary sector, the secondary sector and the tertiary sector. During a particular year, mainly we can say 1 year. So during a particular year, which provides the total production of the sector of that particular year. Usually we take, as I told you, 1 year. Then that gives our GDP of the country, and this GDP shows how big our country is. Okay, so that is the importance of this GDP, or we can say the gross domestic product. And as I told you, in order to avoid exaggeration of the economy, what happens? We only take the value of the final goods and services, not the value of the intermediate goods and services. So that should be kept in mind when we add the GDP. Okay, so that is about the GDP, and we all know that all the three sectors are important to us. Each one sector paves the way for the development of the other sector. And if we look into the past, that is the historical past, we can see that any developed country, as I told you in the last class, the base, the first one is the primary sector, which developed first, paving the way for the secondary sector, and this too giving way to the tertiary or the service sector. And all these three sectors are interdependent also. Now, here we are having a comparison. A comparison is there from 1973 to 2003. We are comparing the three sectors, that is our primary sector, secondary sector and the tertiary sector. And just have a look at this graph. When we have a look at this graph, it is clear to us. See the graph of 1973. In that, we can see that the people who are engaged in the primary sector is comparatively more than the manufacturing sector. Service sector we always know, as I told you, it is related to transport, communication and all. It was also a bit developed. So mainly more number of people also we can see over here is in the primary sector. So here we are talking about the GDP. So the contribution comparatively was more of the primary sector when we compare the secondary sector. That means agriculture or farming. All this was very important. Now, when we move to 2003, just have a look. Now we can see all the sectors have developed. The primary, the secondary, and see the case of the tertiary sector. It has gone too high. That means our service sector has increased a lot. And it is the one which is contributing more to the GDP of the country than the primary and the secondary sector. Even though more number of people are engaged in the primary sector, but the contribution is comparatively not that large. Okay, so this is the graph which shows the comparison of the three sectors. Okay, coming to the next one, that is, what is the share of sectors in GDP? It's according to the percentage they have given, 1973 to 2003. Same way, see, we can make it out according when we look into the percentage again. It is the tertiary sector compared to the primary and the secondary sector, which is contributing a lot to the GDP. As I told you, nowadays we can see the service sector has grown in much importance compared to the primary and the secondary sector. It's not that they are not contributing, but still then we can see the contribution of the tertiary sector is more compared to our primary and secondary sector. Also we can see the number of people, those who are employed. Okay, in these sectors are increasing day by day compared to the other sectors of the economy. So this has gained a lot of importance. Which one? Yes, our service sector, or we can say our tertiary sector. Okay, you see the sectors, share of sectors in employment. I told you earlier, even though more number of people are employed in which sector? Yes, in the agricultural sector. See here, if we take the case of 1973 or if we take the case of 2003, we can see that the number of people engaged in the agricultural sector is comparatively more than the secondary and the tertiary sector. As I told you, the employment opportunities are increasing in the tertiary sector also. Okay, but still then, it's mainly confined to our rural areas and all. When we talk about our rural areas, we can see that most of the people, they are engaged in agricultural activities or farming activities and all. So that is why the share of sectors in employment in the primary sector is comparatively more than the secondary and the tertiary sector. But when we talk about the developed countries and all, the situation is something reversed. The people, those who are engaged in their primary or we can say the agricultural sector, they are comparatively very less than those who are engaged in the secondary and the tertiary sector. So that is the difference between the developing or underdeveloped country and the developed countries. And in some regions, we can see mainly in the primary sector, we can see different types of unemployment. You might have heard about disguised unemployment. What is this disguised unemployment? Yes, the number of people who are working is more comparatively than what is needed. For example, if only 10 persons are needed, what if 20 people are working over there, That is a case of disguised unemployment. And this is usually happening in our primary sector. In our own country, India, we can see that mainly in the rural areas and all, there is no work. What they do? Okay, we'll engage in the agricultural sector. So there is a case of disguised unemployment which is there in the developing as well as in the underdeveloped countries also. And this disguised unemployment mainly we can find in the primary or the agricultural sector. Okay, so this is the comparison that we can see about our different sectors of the economy. And from this it might be clear to you that even though in this 21st century, even though we are talking about different developments which has taken place, still then more number of people they are engaged in the agriculture or in the primary sector. But we can see that for the development of a country, the development of all these three sectors are important, and one sector is only developing, that doesn't mean that the country will be developed. Okay, so this is all about today's class. Thank you.